Morning, everybody. It's so good to be together and worship God with our family. It is always good. It is so good. There's several of our members who aren't here this morning, but we've also got several visitors here this morning. We're certainly glad to see you here. And if you have any questions about anything that we are doing here, anything that's been said, we would love to study with you. We'd love to talk with you more about it. We just want to glorify God. That's all we want. We want to glorify God in the way that He says. And so if we're doing anything that you have questions about, we're more than happy to answer them. Happy Mother's Day. By the way, happy Mother's Day. Now, I'm going to say something real controversial here. So, you ready? Are you holding on to your seats? I know exactly what it's like to be a mom. Yeah, those are words that no man should ever say. No man should ever say that. And maybe unpopular opinion, people who aren't moms should probably never say that as well. Even if you've spent some time with kids, being a mom is just different in ways that I don't even understand. But I know that it's different. There's a special relationship that a mom has with her child that not even the dad has with the same kid. It's different. And that's the way that God designed it. That's the way that God has put it in place. And while maybe we don't all understand what it's like to be a mom, every single one of us can learn so much from moms. Maybe your mom or other moms, whether it's what not to do or what you absolutely should be doing, we can learn a lot from moms. And so this morning, what I want to do is I want to look at an example of a mother in the scriptures this morning. And there's really not a lot said about this woman who's a mother, but what is said is really, really impactful. And we're going to read about a mother's great faith this morning. So if you will, turn to Matthew 15. Matthew 15, please. We're going to spend all of our time this morning just in Matthew 15. So I would love for you to follow along, whether you got your paper Bible or on your phone or your tablet, however you've got it. I would love for you to look at these verses. As you're turning over to Matthew 15, just for a little bit of context, in Matthew's gospel, Jesus has already been doing all kinds of teaching and performing miracles. Jesus has even sent out his disciples with the power to cast out demons, to heal people, and telling them to preach that the kingdom of God is at hand. And what's interesting when Jesus does this is he says, right now, only go to the house of Israel. Don't go to the Gentiles yet. It's not quite their time yet. Only go to the house of Israel. And what's fascinating to me about that is that Jesus really ramps up his public, open rebuke of the Jewish people, and specifically the Jewish spiritual leadership. He really ramps up his public, open rebuke of them and saying how evil and faithless they are. And then when they get really mad and they want to persecute him, they want to kill him, Jesus will sort of retreat. He'll go to another city or he'll go to another location, sort of lay low for a while and let things cool down. Well, in Matthew chapter 14, the chapter right before we're going to get to, in Matthew 14, Jesus has already retreated from a public open rebuke of Jewish leadership. And what he does is he heals the sick, he feeds 5,000 plus people, he walks on water, allows Peter to walk on water, he calms a storm miraculously just like that, and he heals all kinds of people. So, I mean, so much for laying low, right? He's not really laying low. He's making so many waves that if you look at chapter 15 and the very beginning, look at verse 1, it says, some Pharisees and scribes came to Jesus from Jerusalem. So no longer is it just scribes or Pharisees where Jesus is, they're finding where he is and raising accusations and asking questions to him. He's making all these waves. And so here at the beginning of Matthew chapter 15, these Pharisees and the scribes are rebuking Jesus's disciples because hey, they're not following the traditions of the elders. What are they doing, Jesus? What do you have to say for yourself? And Jesus openly and publicly rebukes them very harshly. And he says, you've invalidated the word of God for the sake of your traditions. I mean, do you think they would have liked that very much? I don't. And so what he does again, we're going to see him withdraw again. So look with me at verse 21 here. Verse 21. We're going to see at the end of this section that we're not going to read this morning, Jesus condemns these Pharisees and scribes, not because of what they were doing on their outward appearance, but because of their hearts. Their hearts were wrong. So look with me at verse 21. Jesus went away from there and withdrew into the district of Tyre and Sidon. And so it seems, just like we've seen Jesus do before, he's withdrawing away from this place where he's just made some scribes and Pharisees really mad, and he's going somewhere else to kind of let things cool down because it's not quite his time yet. And we see here in verse 21 that he goes to Tyre and Sidon. Now, Tyre and Sidon are historically outside the boundaries of Israel itself. They're outside the boundaries of Israel. And Mark chapter 7, that account of this same event tells us specifically it was Tyre. Now, Tyre is a notorious place in this day and age for being spiritually filthy, for being spiritually unclean. They were under Roman occupation, bunch of Romans walking around. There's a bunch of Gentiles everywhere. And if you know anything about Jewish Gentile relations, they didn't like that very much. Historically, for the Jews, they'd be thinking about Jezebel in the Old Testament. Jezebel tormented Elijah from this place, and all the terrible things that happened there. Josephus, a historian, wrote about Tyre and said that it represented the most bitter enemy that the Jews at that time had. And it was notorious for idolatry. And so here Jesus is going away from this place with the Pharisees and scribes to sort of withdraw and lay low for a little while. And he's going to this notoriously spiritually filthy place. What would you expect to find in a notoriously spiritually filthy place? Wouldn't you expect to find spiritually filthy people? Well, I think we're going to see that that's not what Jesus is going to find at all. Let's keep reading, because that's the scene. That's how this setting is set up. So look at verse 22. We're going to break this down verse by verse. Look at verse 22. A Canaanite woman from that region came out and began to cry out, saying, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is cruelly demon-possessed." We have this Canaanite woman that says it's from this region. Mark's account in Mark chapter 7 calls her the Syro-Phoenician woman. Maybe your translation says that as well. But this woman's a Gentile. She's a Gentile woman who has somehow heard about the miracles of Jesus, and she comes out to him and begins to cry out to him. Notice what she's saying. She's crying out, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David." By the way, the verb there for she began to cry out, it's in the imperfect tense, which suggests that it's not just she said it once and was done. She was continually calling out to Jesus over and over again, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David." And that word for Lord there, it's not the word for Yahweh. It's more of a sign of respect. Maybe sir there. It's a sign of respect. But then this Gentile woman calls him Son of David. Now that's interesting, especially from a Gentile woman. That means that she, at least somehow, some way, understands something about the Jewish Messiah, even though she's a Gentile woman. And so she's calling out to Jesus saying, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David." She believes that Jesus is that Jewish Messiah, and she knows something about him. That's really significant in all of this. And what she wants is for Jesus to take away the unclean spirit from her daughter. She's cruelly demon possessed, and she wants Jesus to cast that demon out. In Mark 7, Mark's account of this, it actually says her little daughter. So I don't know what picture you get in your mind of how old this girl is, but Mark 7 says it was a little daughter who was cruelly demon possessed. And here's this mother just crying out to Jesus, "Please heal my daughter," over and over again. She's pleading to Jesus because she believes that he can do it. Well, let's keep reading. Before we even look at it, what would you expect Jesus' reaction to be to this? Just think about what you would expect to happen, but let's see what actually does. Look at verse 23. Verse 23. But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and implored him, saying, "Send her away, because she keeps shouting at us." I mean, is that what you expected from Jesus? He doesn't even answer her a word. And even more so, his disciples that are traveling with him, they're getting annoyed by this woman. "Send her away, Jesus. She keeps shouting at us." By the way, it's the same tense there, that this woman is continually shouting this out to Jesus. It's not just once and I'm done. She's continually shouting out. And so much so that Jesus' disciples are getting annoyed. Jesus doesn't answer her, and the disciples are saying, "Send her away. She keeps on shouting at us." Now just imagine if you're this mom, right? I don't know what it's like to be a mom, but I know what it's like to be a dad. But this woman is crying out, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. Heal my little daughter. Heal my little daughter." And the one you're calling out to won't even answer you back. I mean, I don't know about you, but if that's me, I'm done right there. Okay, I'm done. Even more so, maybe this woman hears the disciples talking to Jesus and saying, "Send her away. She's bothering us. Send her away. She keeps shouting out at us." Again, if it's me, I'm probably giving up at this point. But let's keep reading, because that's not what she does. Look at verses 24 and 25 with me, please. So he finally answers, but he answered and said, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and began to bow down before him, saying, Lord, help me. So I don't know how long it is that Jesus wouldn't answer her a word, but he finally speaks to this woman. And maybe, I don't know, just imagine you're this mom and Jesus opens his mouth because he's going to talk to you. I mean, what are you expecting? Maybe he's going to do it. But what he gives is some really disappointing news. He says, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, that's exactly what Jesus said in Matthew 10 when he sent out the disciples to go preach. He said, only go to the house of Israel. You're not going to the Gentiles yet. Only go to the house of Israel. And this woman is a Gentile. She's not of the house of Israel. So if I'm that mom, here's another reason to give up. Here's another reason to just be done. It's not going to happen. He basically just told you, I didn't come for you people. I mean, how would you react to that? Is that what you would expect Jesus to say? That's what he pretty much says there. But this doesn't stop her because verse 25, she came and began to bow down before him. Again, there's that same verb tense. It's not just that she bowed once, got up, and then we'll talk. She is continually bowing down before Jesus, pleading out to him, Lord, help me. She will not take no for an answer. And she clings even closer to Jesus in this rejection. And she doesn't become dejected and give up, but she clings to him. She's so concerned about her little daughter, and she is so certain that Jesus can heal her. She is not going to let him get away. She is begging and pleading to Jesus. But let's look at this next verse because she's going to get another really hard response from Jesus. Look at verse 26. Verse 26. He answered and said, it is not good. Your version might say it's not proper to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. I mean, are you seeing this? Jesus seems really harsh here, doesn't he? He says it's not good, it's not right, it's not proper to give the children's bread to the dogs. Now, in the first century, to be called a dog, that is one of the worst insults that you could get in the first century. You know, we love our pets, we love our dogs today. They had some domesticated animals in the first century, but the vast majority of dogs were feral, just scavengers, eating garbage, eating corpses. And the Jews frequently called the Samaritans dogs, and even the Gentiles, they called them dogs. But Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, even said, don't take what's holy and feed it to the dogs. So how would this woman take this? It's not right to take what is the children's bread and give it to the dogs. Jesus is saying the children eat first. It's their bread. It's rightfully theirs. He's talking about the children of Israel, right? That's what he just said, by the way, in verse 24. I was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He's saying this is for the house of Israel and then the Gentile later. Don't give the food designed for the children to the little dogs. I mean, there have been all kinds of accusations against Jesus for this, by the way, that he's chauvinistic or that Jesus was wrong for saying this. But we have to remember a couple of things. One is that this was a very common view that the Jews of the time held. And Matthew's gospel shows us Jesus' mission really was to the Jews first and then the Gentiles later, but also all throughout just the Gospel of Matthew, we've seen Jesus be willing to interact with Gentiles on multiple occasions. So in the statement that he's saying, his behavior and what he's done before shows he doesn't really believe that in the way that most of the Jews believe that. So maybe he's telling this woman it's not right to give the children's food to the little dogs for another reason. Maybe he's wanting to see what her reaction is going to be. Or maybe his intonation was a certain way that we don't exactly know. And I think that as we read just a little bit, the next verse, we're going to see that that's the case. But also, I just want you to see, this mom is only hoping for the unrestricted mercy of God. Jesus has just told her, you have no claim to me as a child of Israel. You have no claim to me being a part of the house of Israel. You're a Gentile woman. You have no rightful claim to the Jewish Messiah. And yet here she is, bowing at his feet, pleading out to him, shouting out to him. She is leaning on the mercy of God. So let's see how Jesus responds to this. Look at how the woman responds to this. Look at verse 27. But she said, yes, Lord, but even the dogs feed on the crumbs which fall from the master's table. I love that. It's so amazing. The first thing this woman says after being called a dog, one of the worst insults of that day and age, she doesn't say, how dare you call me a dog? She doesn't get up and give him a piece of her mind. She doesn't say, I've been so persistent. How dare you talk to me like that? She says, yes, Lord. Doesn't that say a lot about this woman and what she knows about who Jesus is, she says, "Yes, Lord," which, I mean, she's kind of agreeing, not necessarily agreeing, but she's accepting this label of dog that the Jews were so eager to call the Gentiles. She says, "Yes, Lord," but she comes back with some wit here, and I love this. "Even the dogs feed on the crumbs which fall from their master's table." She's okay with being called a dog as long as she gets the rations that a dog gets. All she wants is a crumb from the master's table. And for this woman in this situation, what is the crumb? The crumb that she wants from the master's table is for Jesus to heal her demon-possessed daughter who's cruelly afflicted. And in her mind, that's just a crumb of Jesus's power. Isn't that huge? Like, she's coming to Jesus like this. She just wants that crumb. After being seemingly rejected at least 3 times, she will not take no for an answer. If she can just get that crumb, that'll be enough. And I think that's why Jesus said what he did in verse 26. It's not because he actually thought she was a dog or that she was unworthy of anything. It was to see how she was going to react. And she absolutely delivers here. If we know anything about Jesus, it's that he has great compassion and great love, especially for those who are suffering. Jesus wants to see her reaction. This woman, this mom, she cares about her little daughter so much. She believes that Jesus can heal her so much that she considers the healing of her daughter from this cruel demon possession to be just a crumb of Jesus's power. Just a tiny crumb of what Jesus can do. She's been rejected 3 times, but she won't take no for an answer. I love this. So let's look at Jesus's reaction, verse 28. Verse 28. Jesus said to her, "O woman, your faith is great. It shall be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed at once. Jesus says her faith is great. She was persistent. It seems like she had this humble perspective that even the Gentiles were going to benefit from the Jewish Messiah. And Jesus told her, "It shall be done for you as you wish." And her daughter healed at once. There wasn't a recovery period. It wasn't like, okay, gradually she's getting a little bit better. By the way, where's this little daughter in all of this interaction? We don't see her at all in this. In Mark's account, in Mark 7, it tells us that Jesus was in one house and that little daughter was still in their house. That means that Jesus doesn't have to be anywhere near this little girl who is afflicted with this demon possession to heal her. He doesn't have to be close to her. He doesn't have to be in the same room. He doesn't even have to see her. And yet she instantly healed. Jesus' power is unreal. And it seems like this Canaanite Gentile woman understood that better than so many of the Jews of that day did. And so time and space just don't constrain Jesus the way that the way that they limit us. So when we look at the first half of Matthew 15, compared to this, we have in the beginning of Matthew 15, religious Jewish leadership of the day. And they are being publicly rebuked by Jesus for their lack of faith. They're being rebuked because their hearts aren't right. Even though outwardly they might appear to be doing everything right, their hearts are wrong and they're filthy. And here's this filthy Gentile woman from a notoriously filthy city. And Jesus tells her, "Your faith is great," and heals her daughter at once. This is an amazing passage. It's just 8, 9 verses. Amazing passage about this mom. And I think of the many things that we can learn from this mother, things that we need to do. I just want to point out 3 this morning. 3 things that she did that we need to do as well. The first one is that she laid aside the barriers. She laid aside her barriers. This Gentile mother had every reason not to ever approach Jesus in the first place. Before even having an interaction with him, she had every reason not to approach him in the first place. Very much like the Samaritan woman at the well in John chapter 4, she very well could have said, "Jews have no dealings with Gentiles, so I'm not even going to try to go out to this Jewish guy who I think can do it. I'm not even going to try it." She very well could do that. On top of that, her being a woman, there could be some stigma with her kind of confronting a Jewish man in this manner. And yet she was on a mission. She was on a mission to help her little daughter, and the solution to her problem was right there. And she wasn't going to let him get away. All of those barriers that could have held her back from ever coming to him in the first place, she set those to the side because she believed that he could heal her daughter. That's exactly what she did. And so for us today, and maybe some people in the room, there might be barriers that you have that are stopping you from coming to Jesus, whatever it might be. Maybe it's questions that you still have that you haven't gotten answers for. Maybe it's pain or suffering that you've experienced or somebody that you love has experienced, or family pressure, or your comfort zone. You don't want to get out of your comfort zone. Whatever it is, those things are stopping you from coming to Jesus. And I want you to see that just like this Canaanite mother, if you let those barriers stay where they are, you won't receive the healing that you need. You won't receive the healing that you want. You have to lay those barriers aside. Or maybe there's people who are Christians in the room today. You've been immersed in the water. You've become a Christian before, but maybe there's still some barriers. There's some obstacles in your life that are stopping you from living a full life of devotion to Jesus. Maybe there's sin in your life that you know good and well. You need to get that out. You've got to lay that aside and follow and come to Jesus completely. If you let those barriers stay in the way, you won't receive the healing that you need. Just like this Canaanite mother, we've got to lay those barriers aside and come to Jesus anyway, come what may, no matter what we might think it is. People might look at me different. People might talk about me. We got to lay those barriers to the side and come to Jesus and receive the healing from him. She was willing to humble herself, lay those barriers aside, all those things that could have prevented her from coming to Jesus in the first place. That's so important for us. We need to do the same thing. But also this Canaanite mother, she was persistently petitioning to Jesus, persistently petitioning Jesus. She was obstinately persistent in petitioning Jesus for the healing of her daughter. And I love that it wasn't even for herself. She was crying out to Jesus on behalf of somebody else. That's just like a mom, right? For her child, she was obstinately persistent in coming to Jesus about this. She kept crying out to the annoyance of Jesus' disciples. Jesus ignores her and seemingly rejects her pleas twice. Why would Jesus do that? I think it's because he wanted to test her faith, to see if she would keep coming to him, if she really believed that he was who she thought he was, and if he could do what she thought he could do. If she had given up at the first or second sign of rejection, what would that say about her faith? And so for us, when we're thinking about this, how often do we petition our God through prayer? And then when it doesn't get solved in exactly the way that we want it to the next day, we get so discouraged, we get so disappointed, and maybe we even lose our faith. It happens to us all the time. And most of the time, it's probably for things that we want for ourselves. We're not even petitioning on behalf of somebody else. Yes, we do, but a lot of times it's probably for ourselves. In our day and age, we get so much instant gratification that maybe persistence is waning. The reason for this mother's persistence is that she believed Jesus was more than capable of healing her daughter. And she just kept asking, kept crying out. And so for us, do we really believe that God is not only capable of solving our problems or taking them away or whatever it is, but completely solving them, taking care of it entirely? Do we really believe that? I don't know if you're anything like me, but I've struggled with that in the past. Sometimes I'm praying out to God, well, I know that you can do such and such, but I sure hope that you will. And then when he doesn't, well, I guess that's not God's will for me. I guess I'm done. What if God is waiting for me to cry out again and cry out again? And on maybe the third time, that would be the time that would do it. He wants us to be persistently petition. If we just jump to, well, I guess God doesn't want that, then maybe we're not going to receive the healing like this Canaanite mother received for her daughter. We need to be like her. She was persistent in petitioning to Jesus, even after being seemingly rejected multiple times. And one more thing I want to point out from this passage, and a lesson that we need to learn from the example of this Canaanite mother, is that she was leaning on God's mercy. She was leaning entirely on God's mercy. This Canaanite mother, she knew she wasn't a Jew. And because she wasn't a Jew, she knew that she had no rightful claim to the Jewish Messiah. Jesus even told her that. I came for the house of Israel. And I don't know how that would have been to hear that. I don't know what that would have done to her, but she kept crying out to her. Jesus came for the house of Israel, not for the Gentiles. But throughout all that rejection, she was relying on the mercies of God. She was bowing at the feet of Jesus, knowing she had no claim as a child of Israel, knowing that she's a Gentile from a notoriously filthy place, and only leaning on God's mercy. She believed he had the power to cast out that unclean spirit from her daughter. And maybe most importantly, she seems to have understood that Jesus is compassionate, that he's gracious, and that he's good and merciful, something that those Pharisees and scribes at the beginning of chapter 15 didn't understand. They were so concerned with getting everything right and enforcing the little things that didn't really matter. They forgot the mercy of God. But here's again, this Canaanite woman, this Gentile woman from this notoriously filthy city. And she understands that about Jesus. It had absolutely nothing to do with how good she was, and it had everything to do with how good Jesus is. That's what she was relying on. And so for us today, we've got to do the same thing. We have to lean solely on God's mercy, just like this mother. We need to realize that as sinners, we're the dogs. In the first century sense, as every single one of us, as sinners, we are the dogs. And we are entirely unworthy of the food that the master eats at his table. We are completely and entirely unworthy of that. But if we can just get a crumb from Jesus can fill us beyond what we even think is possible. Just a crumb is enough. And if we can get that crumb, that will be enough. But what's amazing to me and almost impossible to believe, Jesus doesn't just give us crumbs. Later on in Matthew, in Matthew 22, Jesus details that what the Jewish people had rejected, he was going to open up to the Gentiles. And you know what he described it as? A wedding feast. We talked about the church being the bride this morning. He says, I'm going to invite you to a feast in my kingdom right now. And he's inviting Gentiles into that. A crumb is enough, but Jesus prepares a feast for us. How amazing is that? It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you're from. Just like this Gentile mother, filthy Gentile from a notoriously filthy city, Jesus offers more than crumbs. If we lean solely on his mercy, we lay aside any barriers that are holding us back, and we persistently petition to Jesus, we will receive the healing and the feast that he offers. A crumb is enough. He gives us a feast. And so this morning, as we close, if you've never studied the scriptures, but you want to learn about that mercy, that crumb that's enough, but the feast that he offers, we would love to study the scriptures with you any way that you would want to. But if you have studied the scriptures, you know that you need to be immersed in water for the forgiveness of your sins so that you can enjoy that feast right now that Jesus provides. We would love to do that. We've got the water. Or if you've become a Christian before, but there are things in your life that you know you need to make right now, but there's some barrier, there's some obstacle that's stopping you from doing that. Lay that obstacle, lay that barrier aside. We will persistently petition to the Lord for you and lean solely on his grace and on his mercy. Whatever your spiritual need is, let it be known while together we stand and while we sing.